I'm going to start out here. That photo on the right is AI generated, and it came from an earlier marketing draft. And I said, nope, 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 hold on. Keep that photo. That's perfect. Because 99% about what that photo is awesome. It's giving an incredible visual result for very little AI or very little input that the team had to use, very little prompt engineering. But how many of you noticed that the guy on the left has no chair and 3 legs? And the guy in the foreground sitting in the chair has no legs, and the woman over on the left has no legs. So there's a lot of things that AI gets right, but there's a lot of tuning that goes in to be able to really get a quality outcome product. And that's part of the journey that we've gone through internally, in that we looked at what could we use AI for to improve our service delivery to our clients? How can we get faster, more efficient, more accurate response within it? And are there tools that we can use to help people navigate the vast knowledge of IT knowledge management that we have to go through in all the service delivery interactions that we have today? I'll get there. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're seeing for AI and change in the environment across the business environment. I'm going to walk through what our thought process was. I'll even show you some examples about where we fell down in our process. So you're welcome to learn from what we've learned along the way. And then we'll round out with some ideas on how within your own teams you can start to quantify or at least brainstorm what might be your next AI initiative. Because to this photo's point, it can do amazing things. It still requires a person in the loop. There's still some quality control elements to it, and it doesn't give you that 100% perfect response every time, but it can get you very close with a lot less effort. And that's really the advantage for what AI is introducing. AI overall is just change. It's just a different type of tool. There's nothing magical about AI. It is a little bit difficult to, from a comprehension standpoint, because unlike a typical computer program, which we would consider from a technical perspective to be deterministic, if I give the same set of inputs to a computer program, I expect to get the same output reproducibly. The group that I work with to do the AI development for one of our internal initiatives, I was talking to their CTO, and he said one of the hardest things that we do with AI is it's non-deterministic, especially with natural language processing and large language models, which means that if you ask it the same thing 20 times, 90% of the time you're going to get the same answer, but 10% of the time with the same input, something changes inside the process where you're going to get a slightly different answer. That's because language is imprecise, knowledge management is imprecise, expertise is imprecise. The same thing that permits AI to generate a photo, like on the prior page, is the same thing that introduces some complexity if you're trying to get a very specific answer every time. But it also highlights where it can shortcut some complex thought processes and give people a head start to do their work faster or more efficiently. It's not going to replace the people, but it does change the skill set that they need. I mean, way back when, from a skill set standpoint, you can do math longhand on a chalkboard, and it works, but it's slow. So then people came along and said, great, let's come up with a better tool for this. And we got slide rule, and now we can do more efficient, higher density calculations. A little bit less work, but you still have to give it the right inputs, and you still have to verify the outputs. We go another step, and now we've got pocket calculators. Again, if you give it the right input and the right output, it's going to give you answers, but it still relies on the person to leverage the tool. The skill set of someone involved in mathematics is evolving along the way. And today we're operating with Excel, and there are tools beyond Excel as well. And if you think about it, Excel has taken all of those manual calculations that we had to do over and over again. And if you made a change, it would have this ripple impact through all these other things, and it can simplify it into a model and represent it in a way that gives you the output. Of course, Excel follows the rule in that anyone who creates a spreadsheet, no one else will be able to understand the spreadsheet other than the author that created the spreadsheet, and it's perfect for them, and nobody else can understand it without the author explaining it. But that's part of how we're seeing this evolution of tool set, and we're seeing an evolution of skill set. The bar is going up because everybody is looking to see what's next. How can we do these things more efficiently? How can we deliver? Within business, there's really, I would say that there's a short-term vision for what I'm seeing coming up ahead. There's a midterm and there's a long-term. The long-term is really long-term. It's probably still 2 to 5 years down the road. Maybe that's not long-term as far as everything, but I'm thinking for the pace of technology, that's 1 or 2 technology life cycles. In the short term, you're already using AI today. Every time you use Google Maps or use a navigation tool or you do a text to speech or you have something read back the text or take voice dictation and record that back because you want to text somebody back while you're driving, but you don't want to use your hands. You keep your eyes on the road, but you can talk and give your response. You're using AI. In business, we're already seeing AI get integrated into a lot of the products that we're using. One of the products that we use for our accounts payable is bill.com. And bill.com purchased another group called Divvy. It's now integrated in, it's called Bill, I think it's Bill Expense. We used to have to do, for our expense reporting, we would have to manually categorize every expense that comes through with what type of expense is it? How should it go into the chart of accounts? Whose budget should this operate under? And Bill recently introduced AI naturally into that process to where now it predicts what those values are based on past behavior. And for 80% of the expenses that we have to report and so forth, we can now just say, I agree with what the system has recommended. And it took what was a 30-second process and a little bit repetitive and a little bit more prone to error and said, great, let's just simplify it. And let's reduce that to a 5 to 10-second process. Still requires a person in the loop. You're going to see more and more of that as AI in the short term. You might have heard of Microsoft Copilot, and I'll talk about that here in just a moment too, where it's not you and your organizations having to do custom development to make these things work. It's that the vendors that are building the tools that are already out there are looking to incorporate AI in natural ways to their existing workflows that increase the value of their product without putting a larger training burden on you. So the challenge with this in the short term is that people don't quite know how to use it effectively or build processes around it. Great, the vendors are innovating on it, but it's hard to get your head around it and say, how do I make it a differentiator for my organization? How do I deliver something stronger to my customers or improve my efficiency with AI? It's a little bit harder. We're in this short-term phase right now. Data privacy and governance concerns are a big deal. There are a lot of tools that are available online right now, everything from ChatGPT to Grammarly and so forth, that sure, they've got data privacy about them, but they also got a low barrier to entry. Any one of your users within your organizations might be going out and using those. And imagine, I've seen this case, imagine that there is a medical professional that wants to use Grammarly to spot check their work. And so they take something that might have patient information and they copy and paste it into Grammarly and say, could you reformat this? Well, Grammarly now has that data. And if you aren't subscribed to a corporate plan with data governance and privacy and controls around it, you've technically just had EPHI go outside of your HIPAA terms. And now in a regulated environment, there's all sorts of other considerations. You could even have a trade secret that goes out and flows out through Grammarly, even in a technical industry or something where you're not in a regulated industry. But you have to be thinking about how do you drive the conversation about AI usage, responsible information security within each one of your environments. That last point is also important. I'll refer back to that first photo. Prompt engineering is a growing interim skill where prompt engineering basically means you've got people that know how to ask a particular AI system the particular type of refined series of questions to get to a more and more accurate result. It's the same way that you've got people that know how to write amazing Excel formulas. It doesn't necessarily come naturally. Most people can add up 2 cells within Excel, but if it's got to go do a lookup and then a pull through, it's much more complex. That's a skill set that's developing for AI called prompt engineering. And it's got a lot of market value right now because it's kind of new and the AI systems rely upon it. We'll see that trend out as AI gets integrated more and more with your regular business operations. In the midterm, this is where I think you're going to see the next value. And this wave, this is probably a 1, 2, or 3 year wave that we're on right now, where you're going to see AI built into your line of business applications, not just your ancillary applications like your accounts payable or your legal contracts management. It's going to be in your ERPs. It's going to be in your BI. It's going to be inside of your transaction processing. It's going to be inside of your CRM systems. And it's going to be daylighting things and trends and exceptions within your environment that otherwise would take somebody a lot of legwork to even know to go look for in the first place. And you're going to see these things come from the products that you're already using. As an example, Microsoft Copilot's actually launching here for all businesses. You've got to be subscribed to Microsoft 365 Business Premium, which is what we'd recommend anyways as a baseline, or you have to be running one of the Microsoft 365 enterprise SKUs like the E3 or the E5 as a prerequisite. But imagine the amount of information that most of you have stored inside Microsoft 365, your email, your calendars, your contacts, your Teams chats, your SharePoint, your OneDrive. Now, Microsoft has built this AI engine that can take all of that data in a secure, private to your organization way and give your users guidance to say, hey, you just received this email. I think you're going to respond this way based on what you saw previously and based on this data. Would you like to just accept this message, or do you want to edit this message? And you can turn things around like that much faster. It doesn't take the human out of the loop. It still requires the right inputs, and it requires the visualization or thinking through what you want it to give you. But that's how we're going to see AI come into the midterm. In the long term, one of the challenges that we've got today with natural language processing and large language models is this thing called session state. AI has a short attention span. If you use ChatGPT, I think it has somewhere between a 1 and a 4 hour session state. A session state means I understand the context that you're asking the present question in based on what you asked within the current session. At some point, you say, I'm going to talk about something brand new. And to the AI, you're starting a brand new session. It's like you left the website and you came back to the website, or you exited the tool and you came back to the tool. In the long term, we're going to see the compute costs and the storage costs for persistent sessions go way down. Persistent session means that you effectively now have an AI expert system that is tailored to a task that can learn for as long as you want it to learn. And it doesn't have to start over from scratch with every new conversation. So you've actually got to the point now where an AI system can learn basic skills, learn basic workflow, learn basic information management, and do these things over and over again. And you can go and manage it, make improvements over time and refinements over time. We've even started playing with some of that, at least the automation and the workflows within what we've been doing with AI internally. To think about, if you're going to go down the AI journey, you have to ask some serious questions about your organization. And we did the same thing within our organization. There's got to be a source of truth. What's the AI going to use for information? There have to be realistic goals. Do we want the AI to generate all the photo content without a person looking at it, or do we still need a person in the loop? And then there needs to be management maturity, because like any other business initiative, this is going to take a lot of investment, and it's a lot of time and attention, and it's going to take refinement. It's going to take some effort to drive the adoption along the way. For the source of truth, think about the information that you use within your business to make the sort of management decisions that you operate with. Your data has got to be organized, and it's got to be high enough quality that a person could do what you're asking the AI to do, given enough time. And granted, it might be a pile of information and the AI is faster at going through the pile of information. But AI in general has to be trained, or it has to have a set of knowledge to be able to draw from. And there's both the concept of strongly structured information like transactions, CRMs, ERPs, things like that, and semi-structured information like knowledge that you've collected inside of your organization. Maybe it's in a wiki, or maybe it's in SharePoint documents, or it's spread throughout your Teams channels. You just have to know, what's the AI going to need to be able to see in order to be able to give you reasonable output. And do you know where your sensitive data is and how it's stored? And do you have to think about, from a governance standpoint, there's sensitive information that's mixed in with all this other information, and you've got to keep the sensitive information separate from what the AI is able to do. Because after all, the AI may not necessarily understand your governance policies, and someone inside or outside of your organization asking a sensitive question might get a sensitive answer if that sensitive data is included in the set. You do need to have realistic goals, and I would say that one of the most important things here is to start small and achieve the quick wins. Use those short-term aspects. Get the vendors involved. Talk to your vendors for your line of business applications. Talk to your vendors for your utility applications. What are they doing for AI? Are you leveraging what they're doing for natural language processing? Are they still the best in what they do, or are there competitors that are adopting this stuff faster? try to solve specific challenges. It is a very difficult question. I've seen people actually pose this question to our AI internally. How can I use AI to solve all the technical problems in our clients' environments? Well, and AI is probably not going to give you a good answer to that, but it will give you some generic business and enterprise technology expertise at a very high level saying, quantify this, do this, do this, do this, but it's not going to go do the work for you. There's no magic button for that. You also need to have management maturity as you approach this and quantifying your requirements and expectations. How much effort are you willing to put into this? What's the return you're expecting to see on it? How are you going to measure what the success of the initiative was? And really, this comes down to one of our partners that shared this question down at the bottom. When they get asked, hey, help us build an AI system, the question they lead with is, what would perfect results enable you to do? What would be different? So let's talk about our first major AI project. And this is something internally that we've done over the past 6 months, and this is actually live and operating in our environment right now. And we've had a couple of challenges because the today us can look back and say, whoa, we didn't do that and that and that. I'm going to walk you through what that looks like. So our initial vision is we wanted to reduce the research time that was needed to apply the best service experience to every one of our clients. We want to make sure that every one of our clients, every user that talks to us, every change we make in a client's IT environment is done holistically, well aware of what the entire environment looks like, understanding about what the client is working with, understand what's important to them. We want all that context. And we build that context today within our service delivery teams by having geographic or vertical industry pods that are aligned to particular clients. So they have a smaller client portfolio and then give much more of a personal touch. But that's still a lot of information to manage, and it changes over time. There's no IT environment that's static. There are implementations happening all the time. There are security evolutions that are happening. There are management initiatives. There are business initiatives. And staying aware of all that down to the person that's helping you on the line at that moment is very challenging. Like, okay, so could we create a natural language processing system that can take all of these pieces together and our clients get even faster response with even more accuracy and better connection? We now understand the environment better. So when we started thinking about this, we were looking at, okay, well, great, there's a challenge associated with this because there's not one place that has all of the IT knowledge. Even within one organization, you've got at least in your own organizations, these 6 areas of IT knowledge, and there's 5 hexagons there, plus the delivery activity, all the things you've been supporting, all the things you are supporting, all the things you're planning on supporting, and all the support cases that come up with each one of those. In addition, for us, we also have another layer above this of best practices and procedures that we apply across multiple client organizations. And we have to be cognizant that those best practices and procedures probably apply 95% of the time, maybe even 99% of the time. But they take specific inputs about what's unique in a given client's environment so that they're reasonable and they are applied in a high expertise way to those clients. So we're really struggling, or we were struggling, and maybe we still are, with how to get all of this information to everyone's fingertips very quickly. And by quickly, I'm talking, I want these answers in less than 10 seconds. When somebody asks a question about one of these things, I would like them to have that information back. And that's faster than them going to those places and searching for it, while potentially someone's experiencing pain from an IT perspective. We're just trying to solve the problem. So we said, great, let's build a large language model based AI engine. We're not going to have to train this thing how to speak English. It's already going to know that. It's going to know how to parse that information, but it's got to have service delivery expertise. And we've got to teach it about what's the difference between a server and a network switch and an access point and a line of business application and SharePoint and Microsoft 365. We realized in going through this, we had a lot of tribal knowledge that was just kind of, you must be this tall to ride. And so we don't document those things, which turned into a challenge later on about the AI system and its ability to parse the questions that we're asking without that same context. A large portion of most organizations' knowledge is tribal knowledge. It's not formalized, it's not structured, it's table stakes. You've hired for it, but the AI system doesn't necessarily have that. So that was a challenge, and I'll walk through how we solved that through the vendors. We also had to make sure that whatever solution we put in place was going to be secure and private. client IT environment information, that is security sensitive. We cannot risk any of that being leaked out beyond the Aldridge walls. We can't go outside of our service delivery teams. And ideally, we want to get to the point where we can have a system in place to say the only knowledge you can access is the knowledge relevant to the client portfolio you're operating with. Granted, we have a distributed team where a lot of people support other people, so that's not something we had to put in the initial design, but it's part of the thought process. We didn't know enough when we started this to even be able to accurately quantify what the effort's going to be. So we looked at it and said, okay, let's talk order of magnitude. Would we be willing to spend at least $10,000 on this? Answer was yes. Would we be willing to spend at least $100,000 or up to $100,000 on this? The answer to that was yes. Would we be willing to spend up to $1 million on this? The answer was no. Okay, great. So we now have an operating framework. We're going to try to accomplish these things to the best that we can, spending no more than $100,000 on it. We're actually about 60% of the way through that based on what our platform costs have been and our own time investment and the opportunity costs associated with that. So we built a 3-phase plan for this. We said, great, we know what we want to accomplish. What are we going to do to crawl? Well, initially, we don't know if we're going to be able to trust the system. The system's going to take a lot of refinement and training along the way. So we said, great, internal audience only, we're the only ones using it, and we're going to go through rounds and rounds of refinement until we build a level of trust. We want the system to provide reasonable, comprehensive advice, cite its sources, tell us what's going on, explain the thought process, justify it. Imagine an AI system trying to satisfy technology experts that, yes, that's the correct answer. And then we'll move up to a walk stage, and we're only starting to approach that walk stage right now. There's some automated workflow capability in the engine now, to where rather than a person having to go to the system to ask a question, we want the system to be able to look at the flow of information and say, whoa, insight, and it injects the insights into the flow. Still, we're the audience. And at some future state, there's this concept of a run where we have such high confidence in what the system is doing for a routine set of tasks that we might even let it start responding back with some suggested troubleshooting steps or some suggested resolution steps as soon as we receive a request, maybe even without a person looking at it, or at least a person saying, yes, approve, go ahead and send those troubleshooting steps. We're still going to get it over to a technician or an engineer, but maybe we can help the client even faster and we can get that user back to work even faster. So we turned all this into a written plan. We had target operating environment. We enumerated out what our constraints were. We enumerated out what our phase 1 milestones would be, what our proof of concept looks like. Great, we defined out what we want the interface to look like. We gathered some information from vendors. We refined the written plan along the way based on what we learned from AI. And we shared the written plan back with the candidate vendor saying, this is what we're trying to accomplish. We're looking for your feedback on, can you do this? Is this feasible within our operating framework and what we're looking to do and invest? And this is where we skipped a step. We did not define success on this. I'll even say I was really enamored with the idea of an AI-based solution. I'm like, yeah, let's go. This is going to do amazing things. Who wouldn't want to use this? And I didn't establish empirical metrics and a timeline of, is this successful? When's the checkpoint to say we're on the trajectory or we're not on the trajectory? Did not establish an acceptable ROI target. We knew about what we were willing to spend up to, but we didn't quantify what the numerical gains, the empirical gains. I should be able to see numbers that say the people that are using this in our service team have a faster response and resolution rate and have a faster permanent close. In other words, the issue doesn't get reopened or doesn't have a follow-up on it because they delivered the right solution in context. I should see client satisfaction improving because we know more about their environment faster. We don't have all of that in place yet, and I'll talk about how we're going to fix that and how we're going to course adjust. I honestly expected contagious enthusiasm. I was enamored with it. Why wouldn't everybody else be enamored with it? And part of the challenge on this is that I made them have to come to the AI system versus bringing the AI system to them. Where they live is in the management tools, the service delivery tools, and they have to actually go to a separate Teams channel and chat with the AI when they want these answers. So it takes a little bit of additional step and some habit forming. When I went to start evaluating vendors, you'll probably see the same thing when you're talking with AI. The first vendor I talked to, SWAT team. You spend all this money with us. We're going to have this in and out done. Great. You've got the requirements document. You guys clearly know what you want exactly. In 2 weeks, we're going to turn around your AI solution. And I was like, oh, this is a group that's going to do exactly what I tell them to do and nothing more. And it's only going to innovate to the level that I drive it and continue putting money in. And it's going to be a very difficult relationship, and we aren't going to mutually benefit. So I talked to another set of groups, and these are the generalists where, yeah, they're doing a lot of AI development, but a lot of the AI development, especially natural language processing for the technology industry, is driven towards, let's build chatbots. Let's build self-service assistance bots so that when you have a problem with your internet service, that's the first thing that pops up on your website. I was looking for something very specific. We're an IT outsourcing provider. We work across a large number of client organizations, and the questions get complex. So I was really looking for more of a partner on this. I wanted somebody that was going to come to the table that could share their knowledge, and they were motivated to continue improving the product, and I could ride along with their continuing improvements on the product, but also participate and drive improvements on the products. So in our particular case, I found Neo, neoagent.io. Nick is the founder and CEO, and Anton is the co-founder and CTO. And I will say that I talk to Nick and Anton. Our team talks to them every single week, if not every single day. I talk to Nick and Anton about every 2 or 3 weeks, just so that we're course setting and we're aligning on what we're looking for. There's continuing investment on this. Neo specifically set out to build a MSP specific natural language processing engine based on a large language model. And they're agile, but they're full of AI experts, and I've learned some remarkable things about their development process and how they've done it. We did the initial implementation in July. We had data connections, and we had this expertise internally. We were able to work with the Neo team. We then had our engineers on our side connect them to the data sources that we had in our environment. We went live in October 23. November and December, we've been going through product improvement. We've been doing user insight interviews, because between October and December, our utilization tanked, and users had an initial surge of interest, and then it just fell off. All of our efforts right now are trying to figure out, do we need to course correct, or are we coming in with the wrong tool? Now, that said, it can do some amazing things. This is probably still me being a little bit enamored with it. Neo runs as a dedicated Teams channel. You don't have to install anything. It's just there. It's part of Teams, which we use every day anyways. And we've had to build skills and refinements with Neo. It now knows how to summarize the correspondence of a service request. It can even suggest resolution paths for a service request, or you can ask it about a technology topic, and it will give you insights about how we approach those things. We had to do refinements like when it pulls knowledge and includes that in an answer, it now includes hyperlinks at the bottom saying, I use these sources to answer this question, so that the person can click on that and go to the source of truth and go see where it actually was. And we've used that internally, because if it gives a bad answer, we want to go look at the source and say, oh, we need to update that documentation. It's not most current. I've even had a couple of wow moments on this, where I look at Neo's responses and I look at the types of things that people are asking, and I've forgotten at one point that it was a large language model and had rich natural language processing. Some of our engineers are actually using it as a natural language processing chat GPT aware engine just for us, where they're saying, how can I phrase this in a non-technical way to help this client understand there's no risk and they have these options, and here's my recommendation. And Neo's responding back using our technical terms and the client business terms in an internal chat that the technician is able to then copy, paste it, and actually add their own edits to it. But it reduces the amount of editing time that we're having to do for that. It blew me away, because I had never thought that Neo was designed to do that. It wasn't part of my original spec, but people are pushing AI to try to figure out, what can it do? How can we leverage it more? And they're learning ways to leverage it that I hadn't thought of. Our first challenge in implementing this was vocabulary, and I talked about tribal knowledge. We had to teach Neo what the words our and we meant, because people use that in natural phrasing when they talk between people. Which of our clients have this in their environment? Who's been experiencing this? We had to teach it. That means Aldridge. That means all of our clients. How do you know what the list of clients is? Again, tribal knowledge and sources of truth. We also found out people speak in shorthand, and that seems obvious when you say it aloud, but it was not obvious at the start. And if somebody uses a term like ABC company, You have to understand that, well, that means Acme Baking and commerce or something, but you only know that if you're in that tribal knowledge loop. So we had to teach the AI system, where can you go figure out what these acronyms and shorthand terms mean? And you have to do it in a way where that persistent session is only 1 to 3 hours long. It's got to be able to have a place that it can go and refer to. It can't learn that in detail over time. And we had to teach the AI to be conversational. It now asks, did I help with that answer? And we can answer yes or no. And if you answer no, it asks, what would have made it better? And then internally, we've got a review process where we go through and we look at the answers and we look at the questions that have been asked, and we work with the development team. And we say, is this a skill improvement, or is this something that we can follow back up with the user and help them understand how to engineer their question in a way that the AI system could better answer more quickly if that's the type of thing they're going to ask over and over again. We had a second challenge, the thought that AI can do anything. 2023, AI is in the media all over the place. ChatGPT is on fire. You can do amazing things with it. And so when you present a white prompt in an empty Teams channel and it says, hi, I'm Neo, the natural expectation of everybody is, well, I should be able to ask this anything and it's going to be able to respond back. We failed at that point to be able to explain adequately. Neo is designed with a specific set of skills, and it pulls from a specific set of information. So if you ask it something outside of that domain, it would throw up its hands and say, I don't know what to say. Now we've refined that, working with the team at Neo, to say, it will actually respond back. I don't know exactly how to answer your question, but here's some suggestions on where you might go. And if you need more information, talk to these people. Here's where you can go get that. Because we want this platform to be something that people can go to confidently for answers, even if it doesn't know the answer. What we found is that in that initial October, November adoption, people would ask it anything. They were playing with it as an AI, but the challenge there was when it didn't give the right answer, after about 3 times, they completely mentally checked out. They gave up on the AI system without thinking about what it was capable of or what it was designed to do. It didn't meet their expectations, their unspoken expectations, and so they mentally checked out from it. It's entirely different when you're using AI for play and there's really no quality control or time pressure about the output, and when you're using it for work and you're trying to get to a specific output and there's time pressure. It takes effort for people to change a work habit, and they have to realize that they have to feel that there is a return on their own investment of time to do their job and meet their accountabilities. We also realized along the way that we had to refine skills and the information storage. We had to, in fact, I even got this from the developers at Neo. They expected that they could consume an IT service management system. We use ConnectWise Manage ourselves for our PSA, and that the schema would make the information very reasonable and structured, and it would be very consistent. It's not. You can customize those platforms just like you can customize an ERP, and the way you represent information, the AI has to be taught to understand how the information is represented. It's at the point now where Neo can actually draw inferences about how the data is represented and follow the trail through the system to learn things that it didn't necessarily know at the start and wasn't explicitly taught. We also had to teach it how to weigh our sources of truth for our knowledge. Some of our areas of knowledge, we, from a tribal perspective, think are more authoritative because of who wrote it or how current it is, versus some of the other sources, which maybe are transactional and they're one-off cases. We don't want Neo to take that one-off case and weight it stronger than what our official best practices and policies are. Challenge number 4, I've spoken to a couple of times, adoption. We, on a given day, have fewer than 10% of our service team using Neo every single day. And that's even 2 months after launch. So out of 120 people, we get about 12 or so unique users every day. And it's used for about 10 to 35 conversation sessions a day, which I actually understand is pretty good for this type of AI project, but it doesn't meet my expectations, my unspoken expectations, my undefined expectations for what utilization I think this should have, what it's capable of doing. And so we're doing some course adjustments. We're working to bring Neo closer to where people live. We're working with the operations team to talk about, do you actually want to invest in this to your managers, to your people? Do you want to have recurring conversations to drive this? Do you believe in what this tool can do enough to be able to invest that additional effort? Or if the answer is no, that's not highest best use, well, great, we'll sunset it. We learned a lot along the way. So the lessons learned on this, that upfront buy-in from the intended adopters for the expected outcome is critical. You can't just hand an AI tool to someone and expect that it's just going to change their life and it's going to make them more efficient. And it's going to change the way they work. They've got to be personally bought into it because you're asking them to adopt a new habit. AI excels at shining light on your information source's quality and its conflicts and its depth. You might think that you've got this vast knowledge base or transactional knowledge about what happens in your environment. You will find amazing gaps within the AI system when there's not a person interpreting it, and instead you're getting the AI's interpretation of what the data looks like, and you realize the AI is not wrong based on the data that it's got. And those large language models, the natural language processing, and this is speaking towards the short term and the midterm, they're very well trained on English language and a broad array of general knowledge. When you get down to things that are specialized for your business and specialized for your industry, it takes a lot of work to integrate skills and vocabulary in a way that you're actually going to get a meaningful output on it on a recurring basis. So with this, you've probably been thinking as I've been talking, man, okay, so what do we start doing for AI in our own environment? You want to start brainstorming your ideas and quantify your ideas. And I'll show you a framework that I would suggest that you use. It's not something I used at the time. We created it since then, realizing there was a gap. Brainstorm your project, just whiteboard it, get with your team and say, what's going to help us make more money, save money, reduce risk, what's going to drive efficiency? And then you just plot those out and say, great, for every one of those tasks, how much expertise does that task require and how often are we having to do it? And the thing you're looking for are the things that don't require specialized skills that somebody really has to be an expert in their field to do, but that you're doing over and over again. And you're going to get these quadrants and you're going to say, great, the things that require high volume, but low specialized skills, those are your AI use cases. So you take that brainstorming list and you start to plot this out. So let's presume that you've already met those fundamentals. So now we're just going to focus in on the good use cases. So now which of those do you decide to take on as an initial initiative? Let's expand that out. We plot those out. We say, let's consider how expensive it is going to be to implement this and what's the business value. And we get 4 more quadrants. So now we've subdivided it. We're at 1/16 of our quadrant in the upper right. And now those 4 use cases, we can say, okay, these 1 or 2 use cases have the lowest cost to implement and potentially the highest business return on investment. That's where we want to focus in on. Just like any other business initiative, you're going to have to prioritize an AI initiative. It will not happen on its own. Even if your software vendors are incorporating AI features into the products and platforms that you use, somebody's still got to shepherd it if you want to drive adoption and measure what you're actually getting a result. You've got to make the same investment, have the process leader and the stakeholders know what your outcomes are. How are you going to measure it? What are your prerequisites? How are you going to do training, testing, and validation? People will not just naturally pick it up with where you're at mentally. They're going to have to be led to it. And then what's the ongoing maintenance and refinement going to be? As you think through this, go back to those fundamental pillars and be thinking about how are you going to prepare and organize your data? Do you already have the information necessary for AI to be able to drive? And in my case, we used a large language model, natural language processing. There are other types of AI out there, ones that specialize on vision systems, recognition, pattern recognition, projection. In any case, you've got to look at the quality of information available or how the system's going to get the inputs to be able to give you a reasonable amount of outputs. Set that realistic goal, create a plan to manage it, and have purposeful vendor selection.